Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365, 4 days after the Philadelphia Eagles became Super Bowl champions for the second time in franchise history. We're here with you on Birds 365 to give you all the updates, the breakdowns. Johnny Mac, how you doing in this Thursday morning, brother?
I'm doing well. Happy clean out day. The Eagles are finally cleaning out.
There you go.
So that'll be later this afternoon, and we're off into the off season officially. Although you have a parade to deal with on Friday, so
Yep.
Good luck to everybody trying to get down there.
I might be going down to there. I have a meeting with City Hall today, John, to see if I can be broadcasting from City Hall at the parade. So I will get
Nice.
everybody.
I will check in via phone unless the Eagles have a media bus or media truck or whatever, which they were going to do last time and pulled it at the last minute. So my assumption is, since it's a day before the parade, they're not going to have that. So there's no real media availability for us. So everybody be safe is my recommendation.
I say be safe, everybody, down there. So today's clean out day, Johnny Mac. Do you have media availability with the team today? And I normally remember some final interviews you guys get from them.
Yeah. The locker room's open today. Gonna be one-ish, maybe a little bit after that, but so as the guys clean out their lockers, we get to talk to them one last time, and it's a happy time this year. Not always, obviously. Typically 31 teams lose their last game, so typically it's not a very celebratory environment, but this time it will be. And we'll get some comments from the potential free agents and things like that. But last chance talk to the guys in a group for this season.
Good stuff there, Johnny Match. I got a good question for you in this opening segment. We're going to talk to Jeff Kerr coming up at 8:20. All right, we haven't talked to Jeff in a little bit here, and it's been we had him on briefly in New Orleans, but we've had 2 full weeks without Jeff. So we'll get to Jeff today. Looking forward to talking to Jeff. He put in the last second Kansas City Chiefs pick on the program, but we'll talk to him a little bit later today. I do want to give people the timeline. All right, we're 1 day away from the Philadelphia Eagles victory parade. All right, so who is going to that? You let me know in the comments. We are 14 days away from the NFL Combine. We are 27 days away from free agency. John just mentioned he's going to talk to a couple free agents, Zach Bond, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat. We'll talk about them. And we are 70 days away from the NFL draft. So we are still right in the thick of it with this football season. And as John has said many times before, the offseason is a fun time. All right, it's a fun time. So it's good content, and we look forward to talking to you guys through it all. John, I want to ask you a personal question here. I think the people who listen to us have they have an understanding more so than maybe other listeners of shows. I think we open up and we talk to them about a lot of, how do you reflect on this season personally? It's a grind for you guys. Not everybody sees that. They just see kind of, what you put out into the world, the content that you put out into the world. But how do you kind of look back and view this season and the journey that it was, both for the team and for yourself and for the beat reporters? And it is a grind for you guys, obviously. And how do you look back on it right now? I know we're just 4 days removed. Maybe there will be more clarity in the future, but how do you look back on this season, Johnny Mac?
I haven't really done it, so that's like a player answer. I haven't really reflected
that makes
on
sense,
it.
though.
It's not even over from my perspective. And then because it's such the short season, long season, short off season, we're right back in it, as you mentioned with some of those dates. So when you go to the Super Bowl, and that's the goal for any team, there's, I always talk about unintended consequences. Well, one of those, and that's why, when you had a team like the Patriots or the Chiefs winning 2 in a row, getting back to 3, the fact that they're able to do it with these short seasons is that much more impressive. Where everybody else is, kicking back and formulating their plans and has been for weeks and weeks now, most teams. So that part of it is, but it's always better to cover a team that's relevant, I would say, from
Right.
my perspective. Now, sometimes bad teams are relevant for different reasons. But it's generally a bad environment. People are unhappy. People, so anytime you have a good team, I would say it's a little bit easier, just from the standpoint of interest and all that kind of stuff. And this was a very good team, and there was a lot of also, never hitting their stride during the season. So there was always a lot of questions, a lot of speculation. Could they reach their ceiling? And they did, to their credit. The final two games, just that's what we all envisioned when we looked at this roster and said, all right, well, what are you going to do to stop this offense? Um, Never really formulated until those last two games. We had both sides of it performing at a high level. So, and you can imagine if they can bottle that into next year, um, you're gonna be a significant contender again. A lot of things got to go your way, starting with injuries. Um, you saw what happened to Detroit, starting with Aiden Hutchinson. You can imagine what happens if Jalen Carter gets hurt.
They're already talking shit, Johnny Mac. To
Well, I
Detroit.
mean, they have a lot of issues from the coaching staff perspective as well, losing both coordinators, but they were a very good team, and I think everybody should realize that if they were healthy, they would have been a tough out. But it's part of the game, and they weren't, and they didn't make their goals. And now they got to start over with a. We're going to see what Ben Johnson is. A lot of people have made him up to be the best offensive mind in football, where you're going to see it on both ends. How is Detroit going to get a lot worse? And is Chicago going to get a lot better? And also, I saw somebody speculating Eagles Chicago might be
I saw
the
that too.
the opener, and I'm like, well, that's a pretty easy one for the Eagles starting off. I would think you'd want a little bit more. They have a ways to go, but
We are
that's sort of
203 days away, John, from that game.
yeah. Well, I mean Chicago in general, not the timing, but Chicago's got a ways to go.
No, they do.
Um,
But they're not going to use Eagles Lions in week run, right? I mean, the NFL is going to get good ratings on opening night anyway. I don't think they're going to drop
they
that.
get good ratings, but they generally want some kind of competitive game, and I'm not sure. That's what I was talking about Chicago. That,
Yeah,
but I bring that up because that's people's belief in Ben Johnson. Like they're
right.
going to be good, and I'll hedge my bets on that
Yeah, we'll
right
see.
off the bat.
We'll see how that all plays out, Johnny Mac. Good stuff, John. We'll continue to talk to you about all of those things as we move into the off season. Everybody, all right, we're one day out from the parade, as I mentioned. John, what's the update on the offensive coordinator search? When will we know more about this? I know they're going to obviously interview Kevin Patullo. Any other names that you have heard that they're going to interview? When will that kind of officially kick off? Because I mean, I know the team is in celebratory mode, but 14 days away from a combine, you're 27 days away from free agency, you're 70 days away from the draft, and you are 203 days away from that Thursday night football opener for the NFL. So my assumption would be they want to get this thing filled pretty quickly. When will we know more, and what do you know so far?
They'll probably begin in earnest next week. They've already begun, to be honest. Behind the scenes, how he talked about it. It's like his
Yeah,
job is sort of twofold. He's got to think about the now and he's got to think about the future. So they know they know where they're going, who they want to interview. But obviously nothing's going to kick into gear till after the parade and after cleanout day, which is a little bit later. Typically, it's the day after the season. But when you win the Super Bowl, you have all these other. You saw Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley on the Tonight Show and Good Morning America and all that kind of stuff, and Howard Stern, yada yada yada. You got all these commitments. Walt Disney World. So it throws wrenches into all the normal ways the NFL handles and does business. But Yeah, I mean they'll pick it up, and you know, I'm not going to say 100% because there's always the open door. You have to interview two outside minority candidates. The NFL expanded the Rooney Rule a couple years ago, so they have to interview people from outside the organization. But I would say the prohibitive favorite is Kevin Patullo, um, and it would surprise me if he didn't get the job. But you know, anytime you get an interview, you can hit it out of the park, and if
Right.
you um, hit a home run, you never know. But I would think that that's the way they're going to go.
Do you believe that Frank Reich will get an interview? I know he's like a popular name, and I know we've talked
I
about it
know,
before.
I know. I mean that's up to where's Frank in his life? You know,
Right,
what
he's
does he want to
63.
do?
He's already getting paid from the Carolina. Does he want to come to Philly? It's a big question.
Yeah, what does he want to do? Does he want to take a step back after being a head coach? Does he want to be essentially an employee of his former employee? There's a lot of things that come into that. Um, and some guys, I don't think by any stretch Frank has a big ego. So if he wants to coach, I'm sure, Nick Sirianni would give him the courtesy of an interview. He freaking loves the guy. But yeah, I've said it from the start because, boy, I mean, if you ever coach here, people want you back and if you ever coach here and had
And
any
much success.
success, people want you back. And I would think they'll be looking forward, but we'll see.
Yeah, he didn't call plays when he was the offensive coordinator. Not everybody knows that, John, that he didn't call plays. That was
Well, they
Doug Peterson.
should. They forget really quickly. Yeah, he did
Not everybody has the great privilege of listening to Birds 365, and we didn't even have Birds 365 then. So we have the more educated audience now, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, he didn't call it, but it's one of those things that when he left, there was a downtick, obviously, and then it became the narrative that Frank that's because Frank did this and Frank did that. But not the case. Doug called the plays, and yeah. So I know people want to replicate Vic Fangio. That's not happening on the offensive side of the ball. And look, I think there's also this mentality of this doesn't happen everywhere. This happens everywhere. Like look around the league.
Yeah, but
And
not to this level. There's no other quarterback in the league that's had this much turnover. I'm not saying you're wrong about when you're good, that's going to happen, but the degree to which it's happened with Jalen Hurts is definitely heightened.
Yeah, I think it's the modern NFL. I think the offensive coordinators, I think 2022 is the longest tenured offensive coordinator. It's ridiculous. I mean, in the case of the Eagles, it's difficult because of the success they had. So I say it all the time.
There's literally no fix. I mean, coaches are going to get fired every year, at least probably 4, 5, 6 of them every single year, no matter what happens in the NFL. And then you're looking at the 4, 5, 6 best coordinators. And if your team is, up there, they're gone.
Well, exactly. So, and if they don't, there's a two-edged sword when you're as good as the Eagles. If you're good, you're at risk of losing them, as happened this year with Kellen. And if you're bad or don't reach expectations, they weren't bad last year, but if you don't reach expectations, then you need the scapegoats, which is one of the few things I think Jeffrey Lurie needs to revisit, because I say all the time I think I forget who said he's the best owner in sports. Somebody said that yesterday. Might have been BLG, but he's up there. But the one thing that he is not ahead of the curve on is that reactionary bullshit when things don't go exactly according to plan, and somebody's got to pay for it. But again, he's not the only. Everybody does that. But I think him as a forward-thinking guy, he prides himself on being a forward-thinking guy. He's got to understand that it's cyclical. Injuries happen, things happen. You're not going to win every year,
Right.
and he should understand that better than anybody.
Did he show a sign of growth there last year with the way you retained Sirianni?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. You certainly could have fired him.
Yeah, it's
But
kind
I
of an
but
easy cut though. The
but
guy
I
was the most, yeah,
but I
yeah.
would say this from, talking to everybody since, and he was the only one considering it. Nobody else was considering it. Howie didn't want him out.
Right.
So, I mean, why are you even considering it?
I know, right? He was very, very successful up to that point. 1 year after going to a Super Bowl. So no, I mean, remember when we talked about it as we were speculating. You tell the story all the time. You flew into Tampa saying no chance they fire Nick Sirianni. On your flight home, you're like, maybe they're gonna fire Nick Sirianni. Probably wasn't the right move there, but
No, and that's because of the optics, nothing more.
right.
Um,
Yeah, we talked about the optics firing 2 Super Bowl coaches, that quickly. Wouldn't have been a
that's
good look. It wouldn't have been a good
no, and
look.
that's probably what helped Nick in the end, to
I
be
agree.
honest. But yeah, it was kind of silly to talk about firing him. I mean, he didn't, so it's not that big of a deal. But it shows the reactionary nature of football. I mean, you see it. Bobby Slowick um, went from head coaching interviews to out of work in Houston um, because they lost a playoff game they were supposed to lose.
Yeah. Who's the other guy that happened to you mentioned to me? Byron Leftwich?
Yeah, Byron. I mean, Byron was almost a head coach,
He
and
was
then he's
nearly
out.
the
He's out.
Jacksonville head coach,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
and then he's out of the league. And Bobby just landed in Miami. That was a guy everybody said, well, maybe the Eagles interview him. That's another thing.
Did he get an offensive coordinator job there?
No, senior passing game coordinator. So, but he already signed with Miami, and that's when you talk about late. There's also the kid from Iowa State that they interviewed when they were talking to Kellen Moore. This Nick Sirianni's very close to Matt Campbell, and Nate Shielhaas is a guy they interviewed as a Rooney Rule candidate, and a very young, up and coming coach now with the Rams. I thought that's somebody they'd revisit, but he signed up recently to return to Los Angeles. And it's really late in the process. You're getting the Sean Desai's of the world.
I
That's why
know.
I'm so. That's why I'm so high up on. Hey, you got to go with Kevin Patullo. You have.
I agree with you, but I will say this. All right. And we know about Jeffrey Lurie, and Jeffrey Lurie, you talk about him all the time with the way he likes to, be forward thinking and learn from mistakes and stuff, things of that nature. All right. Here's the last 5 offensive coordinators for the Eagles: Frank Reich, Mike Groh, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, and then Kellen Moore. There's 2 clear names there who were scapegoated and sent out to pasture. Both of those guys were promoted from within. I'm not saying Kevin Patullo is going to have the same fate or that he won't do a nice job, but does the owner look at this and say, well, Kellen was successful. We brought him from the outside. Shane was successful. He was brought in, obviously, with Nick Sirianni. Frank was successful under Doug. When we promoted Mike Groh from within, unsuccessful. When we promoted Brian Johnson from within, unsuccessful. Again, I'm not trying to criticize Patullo, but do you think the owner puts any stock in that?
No, one of the things Nick points out correctly so, and I think people should realize Shane was a promotion in house. Shane was brought in, as you mentioned, but he was brought in as the offensive coordinator, not the play caller. And then Nick decided, job's too big. I'm going to go in a different direction.
Right.
They didn't go outside the organization for Shane Steichen. And Nick points that out pretty consistently. So really, you're talking about one guy, Kellen Moore. And look, I think Kellen did a phenomenal job, but for different reasons than most people think.
I agree. I know where you're going with this. I agree.
And he was not what was advertised by even a realm of the motion, the
Yeah, no,
creativity.
John, I remember it so well, the off-season stories leading up to this, and he's going to be the difference that the team needs in the passing game. With remember, we used to fight about motion in the off in the
Yeah.
off-season. I mean, I
Nobody's talking about
remember it
that's
well.
another one. I never hear motion anymore.
Yeah, you
I
don't.
never hear
You can
creativity.
spike the
Sometimes
football in that, John.
sometimes I get creativity, and yeah, that's such a nebulous word. I love when people talk about creativity and they have no idea what is being run.
Right.
But anyway, from Kellen's perspective, I thought he showed what a great coach he is by adjusting in season, and that's what you do. And what he was trying to evolve the offense, and there's no hurt in trying to evolve the offense in the off season in the spring, and it's all we talked about. You can go back and read me or read Jeff Kerr, read anybody else. It's all anybody was talking about, the evolution of the offense and all that kind of stuff. And then week 5, they said, hey, it's not working to the degree we wanted, and let's scale it back and lean on one of the great offensive lines in NFL history, and Saquon Barkley, who had the best running season in NFL history. And they rode it all the way to the Super Bowl. And Kellen deserves credit because that was not his offense in Dallas. It was not his offense with the Chargers. But he deserves credit for morphing around the talent he had. He never had an offensive line like that. And he had some good ones in Dallas, but
right.
So, you come in and you see that and you say, all right, let me lean on these guys. And it worked. So to me, that's great coaching. And the next guy will come in, whether it's Kevin or somebody else, and try to evolve the offense further. And if it doesn't work to the degree they had hoped, they'll probably scale it back again because they're going to have a really good offensive line and a really good running back.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. Let's get to a couple super chats. Then we'll get to Jeff Kerr. He was in here. He dropped out. Maybe he's having some internet issues. We'll see when we get to him. Dank Bird Gang says, I'm rocking my Stout U hoodie right now. Thanks a ton, Zander. Dank Bird Gang, thank you, brother. Appreciate you being here, being a member, and supporting the channel. I'm super happy you got your hoodie. Brandon Lewis checks in. Good morning to the PFF god, John McMullen and Zander. I love it. Good morning, Brandon. How you doing, brother?
Hey, by the way, speaking of PFF, Cooper? Your dad was asking me something about Cooper DeJean yesterday.
Yeah, he was doing a short on Cooper, yeah.
And I'm looking, he ended up being the number 1 graded quarterback in the entire NFL.
Yep, that's pretty unbelievable.
Number one. So I imagine Brandon will like that one.
Brandon, do you like to hear that, brother? Good stuff, Brandon. Thank you, brother. Nick Gonzalez checks in. John, can we get some inside baseball? How much does AJ actually dislike Jalen? I love the Birds, but never see them even talk. I think he hates them. I don't agree, man, but,
no, they don't hate each other. No, AJ has 2 young kids. I don't know if anybody has your friends get married and they have kids and you don't hang out with them as much as you used to. It's a natural part of growing up. So I don't think they hang out as much as they used to. But no, they don't hate each other. And there was plenty of video of their celebrations together in the Super Bowl. They do not hate each other. Yeah. AJ's a very I don't want to use the word strange, but he's a very rare person in the fact. I don't know if you saw his Instagram comments. He's like, "You're not happy." He thought he'd be happy.
I understood what he was saying.
Yeah, so did I because I've gotten to know him over the years. He's just an incredibly driven person. He's always working out. He's always doing stuff to get better. And he thought he'd be satisfied by Super Bowl championship. And he's like 2 days later, he's like, all right, what next? Which I think is a good thing, by the way.
That's a great thing. Are you kidding me? I think that's an important way to view life. That's why Jalen Hurts has that approach as well, where it's the process. It's not the results.
So no, they don't hate each other. Yeah, and I don't. But again, people reach different stages in life,
Right.
And
Will you confirm or deny that there's a little bit of a complex change in their relationship since they started working together here in Philly?
well, I
Or
think that's the complex change, but I don't think it's that complex. I think that's natural. Again, everybody in their own lives, especially if you're my age, you have your friends, you have your boys in college,
right.
and every one of them gets picked up, and you
Yeah, I'm
don't see them as
26.
much.
It already happened to me. I mean, all my college, but I haven't seen a lot of them in years.
Yeah, you don't see them as much, and it's just growing up. It's all it is. Excuse me. It's Yeah, I think that's it. That's the extent of it. So they don't spend as much time together because of that. Because when AJ does get free time, he's spending it with his kids. Um, and that's pretty much it, I would say.
Good stuff
Now,
there. Good.
I know everybody goes down the route because the diva wide receiver, blah, 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 doesn't get enough touches. He definitely wants to touch the ball more.
Right.
But, again, I would say you don't want a wide receiver that doesn't want the football. That's not a good way to go.
Yeah, I agree. William Robinson checks in. We're going to get to Jeff Kerr in just a second. Good morning, Jeff. Jeff, I've been waiting to talk to you, brother. Good to have you back on here. One thing about changing coordinators so often is while there will be hiccups, all that information and growth will make him a beast down the road. Do not doubt a 4,000-yard season one day as he grows. And I don't even think that's a metric, William, I'm looking for, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's overrated. I really do. But, John, what's your response to
Yeah,
that?
well, I'm with you. I don't give a shit. 4,000, 4,500. Generally, if you throw for a lot of yards, you're behind a lot. You're trying to come back. Um, quarterback play is really poorly evaluated, I would say, by most people. And you know, it's are you making Tom Brady described? Oh, always listen to Tom when it comes to quarterback.
Yeah, right. That's a good guy to listen to.
His evaluation is simple. Did I get my team in the position to make the best play each and every play? How many times do I do that in a game? That's his stat. That's it. That's it. Sometimes it might not even work, but you put him in the right position to potentially succeed.
Right.
All the other stats, and I get stats are part of sports and part of game, but it really is bullshit. And I say it all the time. And if Jeff figures out there he is, and he's a stat guy. But I get it; they have their place. But like Kirk Cousins is a guy I talked about, who I think is an underrated quarterback. He throws for 4,000 yards every year, or he did till he tore his Achilles. High volume thrower, but he's also on mediocre teams. He's got a chance to do
Right.
that. Still great, arm talent and all that kind of stuff if you evaluate it from play to play. But that's not what you want. You don't want somebody throwing. You go way back to Dan Marino, who might have been one of the most best throwers of the football of all time, near 5,000 yards and all that kind of stuff. You don't want that. You don't want that. That means you don't run it at all. I would say, to be honest, Saquon Barkley, you don't want that. What you want is the last two games,
Right.
where you can do both. That's what you want.
I agree.
Now the Eagles were able to win, and you can win a lot of ways. But what you want to be, clicking on all cylinders is to be able to do both. And the Eagles were able to do that against Washington and Kansas City.
Good stuff there. Final one of them, we're going to get to Jeff here. Luke Stad said Slowick got screwed. Any offense that loses two top receivers, two top linemen is going to struggle against the conference champ. Yeah, I get that. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
well, yeah, he's a scapegoat. I mean, that's
yeah.
by nature. I mean,
Don't reach expectations. It's not just a Philly thing. You're going. But you are right, Luke Stad. It was an unfortunate circumstance for him. It's like the Lions. If we lost Zach Bond, Jalen Carter, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and Quinyon Mitchell this year, would we have been good? I don't think so. But, I digress. All right, let's get to Jeff Kerr here. I want to give you guys a quick live read, then we'll pull up Jeff. All right, check out BetUS, everybody. They've been sponsoring us all year long. They're going to keep sponsoring us all through the offseason. Go check them out now. Use the promo code YouTube150. Gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring the show